Good.
Good morning again. Artful discussion number 2, of course, would not be as cool unless we had a real artist with us, and we do today. Once again, I'm so excited to have today's artist, Joe Culver. I'm exactly excited because he was a student at the school I taught at for many, many years, and that school was Anchor Bay. And he has some memories, too, of teachers that we were very fond of that he'll be talking about. And, of course, I have a poem to introduce you. Joe Culver. Joe is outrageously cool, energetically creating unique sculptures with his love of the very different, while enlisting materials ready for our senses. I present to you, Joe Culver.
Thank you all for coming today. My name is Joe, and I'd like to share with you my latest series that focused on Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon, 3D printing, and anxiety in 2017. Immediately after graduating from Wayne State with a degree in sculpture, I found that I didn't have the facilities that I was trained to use. So things like welding, woodworking, metal casting, those were, as far as I could tell, highly specialized facilities that I no longer had access to. So I was forced to continue to make art without knowing how to make the art that I knew how to make. So I went back to my roots in drawing, but I realized it had changed from the drawing that I was used to back in the day. So without the ability to create in 3D, I fell back on drawing. This time it took odd dimensional turns. So I was trying to encode different memories of my life into these abstracted images that I focused on maps and charts. This was a series known as Consolidation Attempt, and fundamentally I was trying to just encode the experiences of my life in an abstract form on paper with a minimalist approach. Further into this series, I kept on building this as Consolidation Attempt, and it was only natural to consolidate all the different images that I had made. So after taking the images into Photoshop, I made a composite image. And after a while, that started to really inspire ideas to work back in 3D in whichever way that I could. So this was a suspended sculpture made with plastic parts from a plastic injection mold shop that I'd been working at the time, along with found wood. All of these parts would have otherwise been destroyed, so my natural tendency to hoard every interesting thing that I could find kind of exploded in this new format. And in 2015, it took first place at the Michigan Annual Art Center, Michigan Annual Art Competition at the Anton Art Center. After that, I tried to make my work a little bit more relatable because I felt anxious showing abstract work that needed to be explained to death. So I took pictures of the places that I was trying to reference in these abstracted images, and I made a diagram that was projected on the wall, along with photos that kind of pinned to it like a strange serial killer or detective. And I started to see the drawings that I was making as something that was ephemeral, because had I not been around to explain it, it would have just, the idea would have been lost, if it weren't for written words. And it's not really how I'm used to encoding my history, so I created this projected image which faded away over time on a loop. That way, once it disappeared, you were left with just the physical artifacts that you could relate to in artwork. I went back to sculpting using this kind of new found art format and suspending it. and I had the opportunity to show at a big sculpture exhibit at 333 Midland in Highland Park. This was the largest installation I had done, and I'm afraid of heights, so this was terrifying. It was a central format made of steel and wood, all of which were made of either kindling or wood that would have been burned, or plastic parts from the shop that I was working at the time that would have been ground up and recycled. And over time, I guess the anxiety of trying to encode these otherwise useless images down on paper for only me, that started to get to me. So I went on a trip with my brother Kyle, and we just had a lot of fun listening to music that we would when we were younger. So Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon was just the soundtrack of this kind of experience. And I never really incorporated gummy bears into artwork before, so that was a first. While this was going on, I was inspired. I kept on being inspired by wherever I was working. So at the time, I'd shifted gears from a plastic injection molding shop to a metal fabricating shop. And I realized they had a CNC plasma cutter, which is this table that lies a piece of steel on it. And as long as you can program an image, it'll have a tool cut that out very precisely. And I definitely wanted to use that, but that would have meant I would have had to refine certain skill sets. So at this point in time, my work was taking a sudden turn towards the more technical, amongst the insanity that had basically built up to this point. And from this dark image that's on the screen now came my first 3D printed sculpture made through shapeways.com. I'm going to pass this around. There we go. Oh, so that was 3D printed steel, which that skill set I learned at Anchor Bay High with Denise Kitchen. She runs the AutoCAD area, and that was really helpful to just learn about operating in 3D space in a virtual kind of setting. But being able to take the physical aspects of sculpture that I really love and apply them to, to me, this new technology of 3D printing and steel, that felt like a nice breakthrough. So with the Dark Side of the Moon as a backdrop to this new endeavor, I built upon that idea, and I started making 3D printed steel work. This one showed January 6, 2016 at the Anton Art Center. And no, that was January 2017, I'm sorry. So after that one was on display, I had about 7 months before the solar eclipse that came through, and it just seemed to dovetail pretty nicely. So I had myself a new operating system for making sculpture, a new ridiculous deadline, and a new album to fuel all of this. So it all came together with 10 different works over 7 months in 2017, with the deadline being the Great American Eclipse. From that point, my favorite song on the record was Any Color You Like, which was an instrumental track. Still fueled by this body of work previously, where I was encoding the different aspects of my life. I set out to make 10 smaller printed steel sculptures, and these ones would come to be known within the work as sentinels, which would come to represent the 10 different areas that helped foster artistic development over the course of my career. So this was the sculpture Any Color You Like, which went along with a two-dimensional image and video. links up with QR codes. That way you could reference through technology, accessible technology at that, these different stations of my life, and have them all come to rest on one object. This was the video that played at Hatch Gallery in Hamtramck. And people who would interact with it would be able to scan the codes and see where these sculpture components took place. And the goal was that they'd recognize this body of work within a body of work as basically an object that would come to represent the development of my career as an artist through the spaces in which I learned. And this is a photo by Jeff Cancelosi. I wanted to get back into suspended work, so the sculpture Breathe, which is over by the door, I wanted to include a suspended sculpture, and my professor, Todd Mitchell, right here, taught me most of the good stuff that I know. He argued that this was two sculptures. It made sense because I saw this as a sculpture within a sculpture. And this one was a lot of fun to make. It included 4 different parts of printed steel, found objects, and this really fine bronze chain that would hold everything up. Probably the most challenging piece of this series to make was money. And I felt like I'd do a giant disservice to the work if I didn't reference the iconic bass line that introduces the song. So if you are able to take a better look at the work, you'd find that there is this repeated pattern of 8 notes multiplied 3 times around a sphere. And that's what creates the composition for the placement of the sticks that are coated in cut up dollar bills. After it had all come together, there was something about this that reminded me of either a neuron or some sort of virus, and I think it fed into the idea of throwing money at an object until you're satisfied. Thank you.